the earlier, let me tell you something from my perspective about the earlier question about channeling and getting yourself in that direction. Now, from me more, um, I've noticed, especially in the last 4 times, maybe that I've been with this group of friend of mine, it might be a little bit more than that, that the energy that shows up afterwards, the tingles and the boing and all that stuff is just so tangible in the first 5 or 10 minutes after I'm done with those guys. It's so cool. It's really neat.
Awesome. I know I get a lot of goosebumps whenever I call them, they're like calling cards when I have entities check in.
Mm.
And the energies don't always feel different. So I always know that there's some entities with me because that I give permission, and I know any high vibrational entity is welcome to share my physical experience.
And I'm reminded too to say that remember, as a part of your oversoul, you are connected to many aspects of self that you may interpret as entities, something foreign, but they are not. They will feel very comfortable to you as an expression of your oversoul.
Hmm. Well, I just view any entity that shows up, it just enlarges my concept of self, no matter what the origination point is. If it comes through me, it's me.
Yeah. It has to come through you as you.
Hmm.
All the
True.
energy that is shared, we'll say physically, is filtered through the soul, filtered through you, the rest of you. That's the way all interactions work, actually. Because even though all of consciousness is all of consciousness, there is a particular way that to have the experience that consciousness has as consciousness, as action, these types of expressions of itself give it the unique perspectives that it so thrives on.
Yeah, because I've had entities who came in. There were two gentlemen who were chefs, and they were admonishing me the whole time while they were instructing me on what to cook, calling me a damn Westerner. And, they're like, well, now you get to add croutons. I'm like, I don't have croutons. I just got back from vacation. He's got crackers. Do you believe this? He said crackers. They're like, okay, we'll work with what you have. And I ended up cooking a chicken dish that had 14 ingredients. I'm a simple guy, three, four things. I might have seven things, but that's about it. And it tasted wonderful. I mean, I never put blueberries and stuff like that
Right? Yes.
chicken before.
George Grandma says the same thing. Apparently, he has some quite proficient chef that he has another incarnation as and shows up in his existence a lot.
But I was like, I was just laughing and cracking up. This first time I was ever been so insulted so consistently that I enjoy. But that's when I know that I have other entities that are tapping in at times.
Right. Yes.
Like when my skill sets expand beyond my
Mm,
physical means, like being able to sing a perfect baritone at the baseball game, where people were standing up two and three sections over and saying, "Oh my gosh,
mm.
where's this voice coming from?" And the people who were around me, who I had season tickets, so they were all, like, "I didn't know you could sing." I'm like, "I can't."
I recall in college when I really abruptly shifted focuses. I was in my first year, maybe my year in a quarter at that time, struggling with school, struggling with school. I was a chemistry major. And I don't know if it was over Christmas break or what it was, but I came back and all of a sudden, learning was noticeably easier. And in a very short time, I was understanding everything. As long as I paid attention and did some studying, all of a sudden, information was easier for me to take in, easier for me to grasp, everything. And I didn't even notice it then. It took, in fact, this exploration, knowing that those types of things can happen, to go, holy wait, I remember when that happened. It's one of the, I've had some others, but that's one of the ones that stands out the most to me, where there was such a change in such a short period of time of how I was approaching and interacting in my existence.
Now, were you aware that we got a short biography on you? Starting from your dreams as a child.
Yeah, right. Yes, absolutely.
So Chuck, I think I'm I'm wondering if it's true or not, but as Ray mentioned that you were going to come join the group and be with us here tonight and gave us a link to your YouTube channel, I was like, okay, I'll go see what this guy talks about, you know. I watched one of your videos and was like, wait a minute, I've seen this guy. So you went to the Bashar and Sedona thing recently, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I don't know if you remember, but the night of the meditation that he did, before they took us out to the field, if you did it in the field or if you did it inside, I don't know. There are a bunch of people lining up outside the Performing Arts Center door, and there's a wall there that has, you know, kind of a raised wall. And
Yep, I recall it.
I I sat on the wall and I was reading, you know, I picked up Bashar's The Formula book and I was reading it, and I looked up and I'm pretty positive I saw you about 10 feet away from me
You do look familiar to me.
talking to a lady about how you have been doing channeling recently.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
So yeah,
Yes.
I think I've been about 10 feet away from you.
So it's so cool too, because I was we started, as you know, kind of later in the day, noon, 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
And so the first morning I took the opportunity to go up on Bell Rock and just, walk around and climbed it. And as I did, there was this guy that walked past me and I noticed him. And and then my attention was always drawn to him every now and then. And then I went a different direction and he went a different direction. And then I came around and he was sitting on a rock meditating. And I walked quietly as I could behind him, and then continued on. And so then later in the day, I'm on that balcony that you're describing, and I'm just kind of looking around and I'm going, hey, it's the guy. And so I walk over to him. I said, hey, I said, remember me? And he goes, no, where'd I see you? I said, we were on Bell Rock together earlier this morning. Oh, he said, did you have a white hat on? I said, yeah. And so we started talking and, he's been into the exploration for a long time too. And so we had a great conversation. So it was pretty cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Nice story. Thanks.
Yeah,
Just
that was a
adding to the biography.
You'll get the transcript.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was
right. Hey, we should keep this as brief as we can now.
There was no brief about it.
I feel you, because in the Chris group, we would have somebody that would do a summary, and we'd have somebody transcribe that summary. And so I was the summarizer many times. I infrequently was the transcriber. So, we had a few people that like to do the transcribing. So yeah, I've been in a group that those things were going on all the time too.
Well, I find the YouTube is about 90% accurate,
Mm,
because you can't say the word serious and have it come out to be a star system. It has to be something that's
yeah, right.
US. So, but yeah, and talking with, and a lot of us here have been with Zariah, who is channeled by Ace Ashling.
Sure. I've seen the
And
name, read a few of the things, a few of the posts. There's a
yeah,
lot of stuff. I haven't added this type of flavor to my exploration, the extraterrestrial stuff, until I don't know. I think it was maybe 3 years ago I first started tuning into Bashar stuff. Maybe not quite that. Until then, yeah, I'm aware, but I didn't really dive into any of it deeply at all. I was too busy exploring me,
mhm.
and all the ways that I was exploring me. Then I became aware that exploring me is going to be about this as well. And I'm going, well, that feels cool. And so, yeah, I was like, for me, especially in the last decade or so, when it's something that I know is really going to add a nice flavor to my exploration, I can tell right away. You guys are probably all the same, so it's like, and I had listened to Daryl channel maybe 20 years ago, 18, I don't know what it was. And for some reason, that initial delivery and energy put me off. And because what I'd been familiar with was much gentler than that, you know? And so I just went, nah, not now, you know? And people around me would mention, Bashar here and there and stuff, as we talked about various channel sources. And then, I don't know, I don't even know. I can't really remember how I stumbled back on to him, if it was a YouTube thing showing up or what it was. And all of a sudden it was different.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, yeah, cool. And
Okay,
then
here,
little things start to pop in about little experiences that you had that start to make a little more sense then. Plus, I like his approach in a lot of ways as well. Um, yeah, yeah, it's nice.
he's an
Um,
expert teacher.
yeah, yeah. Enjoy him as in that. I
You know,
like I like his directness a
yeah.
lot too.
And he gives you, he'll say something and he'll give you two or other three things so he can wrap a lot of context
Yeah.
to what he's saying. And there's no uhs, there's no ahs, there's nothing of that. It's just all flow, which is why he's a first contact specialist. Thanks for staying up with us, Miles.
So
Oh, yeah.
I'll mention something else about the channeling stuff. So as I was getting into it, and I was becoming increasingly familiar with Bashar, I ran into Bashar, mentioned, oh my gosh, just had the name and now it's gone. What, Ray, you probably know the female counterpart, he calls it, of himself.
Philip.
What? No, no, not Willa. The other
Oh,
Sasani.
oh,
Anima.
Yes, there we go. So all of a sudden, and it was concurrent. It was the same day. He mentioned the name, and I started feeling another energy around me. And then I was hearing the name. Then I was running into all sorts of bizarre stuff with the name. And then as I was channeling, because I was channeling with my friends then, as I was channeling, there was a second energy that I was feeling that was around. And I knew that that's who it was. And so I mentioned it to my friends, and the energy was there as just that energy for a while. Then what happened was that Anima introduced another energy to me, an energy that's part of my oversoul that expresses itself as what Bashar would call Anuhet. And there's some connection between this particular expression of consciousness and the expression in Egypt that was intoned Amun Ra.
ooh,
At first, I had the introduction to this Anuhet's energy, and then there was a little bit of a change in the flavor, but all of a sudden, this Amun Ra name is showing up every place. And as I'm reading it and listening to it, there are all these feelings going on and sometimes emotional releases. And I'm like, well, what's up with all this? And then I start to visualize me channeling, my face changing as I'm channeling. So I look like kind of an Egyptian individual. And in that expression, somehow being able to speak the language. And then, because I previously spoke with an audience member who was Egyptian in lineage, I asked them to record it, and then I speak in an incredibly old dialect that was associated with that area. And we said, play this for your grandfather, because her grandfather had a connection to an individual that studied ancient linguistics. And we introduced ourselves then as Amun Ra to the culture once again. So
Wow.
yeah, it was very interesting.
I'll say.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well, I'm finding this very interesting, but I'm going to apologize. I usually get up around 5, and this is a
Ooh,
pretty late night for me. So, hey, I
yes.
loved it. I really enjoyed it. Thank you all so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
now, and Chuck, I just started following Bashar, I guess, on Facebook. I had hit and miss here and there, and I liked everything I had, but it really didn't stick with me. And then it's probably a little bit less than a year ago, I really got into it. And all of a sudden, then I'm bantering back and forth with the admins, and they're my friends, and I'm getting invited. Now I got like 9 groups that are related to contact in some way,
Yes, yes.
and it's
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
amazing.
So I've been playing with the fifth level of open contact stuff
Mhm.
in my area. I drive about, I don't know, 35 minutes to get into the countryside, and there's a large park that's there. I don't know, 8,000 acres, maybe something like that. And there's a place I can pull over by the road and then walk down this path and overlook the park. And it's pretty quiet out there usually. And so I've been playing with that a little bit. Um, and I've had some feeling states happen, but I haven't seen anything visually yet.
Mhm. Well, I don't know how to classify. One of the things that happened to me was when I had this little bitty disc that's apparently a natural phenomenon. It looked like a little donut, size of a pinhead. And Christian saw the video, I know, that I posted. And then it moved up to eye level, and then it ballooned out to almost the size of a dime. And then it went up, and it was following me back and forth against the wind, and it just stayed with me for a long time. And I'm like, I'm just open to whatever's happening. And I was overjoyed. And I knew that it was something that was not physically oriented because, with a steady 8 to 10 mile an hour wind, little things like that are insubstantial do not move against it. So I was like, oh, now I got the goosebumps going. I'm hitting on all cylinders. Cool. Um, and so and I asked Soraya about it, and she says, I'm so glad that, you accepted that for what it is. Maybe it was just a small ship. And that was kind of, where she left it. And just that sense of wonder, because, we're all going to be tested to see where we're at, to see how well we react. And I was in a CE5 meditation, and I instantly, like a couple minutes in, I got a download that was like 20 minutes of time in a 4 or 5 minute span linearly. And in one of them, as soon as it started, I got this big alien face right in front of me that was like a dark gray with big black eyes. And it just popped right in front of my face. And I'm like, oh, cool. And that must have been the right response, because then the rest of the download commenced. And had I went, oh my God, that's horrible, I probably would have closed myself off to a lot of that stuff. But because I didn't, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. All this, it's just been an amazing 3 weeks for me. All this stuff has happened since Arjuna showed up.
That sounds very cool.
And I wish I would have remembered. I just got the question that I wanted to ask, which was in my channeling practice, or channel, I'm just going to call it channeling. I'm just sitting on a log that I picked, and I'm writing down whatever comes to me. I just say I'm open, and they flood me. And it's more conversationalist. And they're like, no, we hear all your thoughts. We hear all thoughts. And I'm like, this is really cool to connect with something that, and then today they told me they connect to all thoughts, whether they're not actualized or not. And I found that fascinating, because they're still seeing the frequency of that possibility. I got the vision before about, we see um, uh, fractals, and we all see them in 2 dimensions, when in fact they're spherical, and the sphere just gets bigger as it expands. And they're all holographic points that can interact with any other point which inside that sphere of fractals. and they're expanding in all directions. And I'm like, well, that really fits and resonates with me about what our reality really is. Because, when I asked entities before, what do we look like? You're just this mass. If you want to call it a ball, it's a ball, but it's all changing. And we're seeing all of the probables and all of the possibilities and everything that's interconnected. So we just see you as this shining thing that's pulsing in ways that you wouldn't understand. And I'm like, that hit me.
Cool.
This is so invigorating. Thank you so much, Chuck. Oh my gosh, what a gift.
It is. The thing is that, having those guys and even Facebook, and more Facebook than other things, I share information on platforms like Quora and Reddit and stuff like that, and but it's a very, that's really what I feel like doing in a moment kind of a thing, you know. But the interactions on Facebook, with individuals like all you guys is, it's such an invigorating thing to get together with those guys on Sunday. I think that all of us are at the place that, when this kind of energy is flowing through you is really when you're, to me, my experience feels the most satisfying all the way around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the question I wanted to ask that I forgot about is the the channeled entities, whoever they are, told me that this was part of my tradition. And I'm like, tradition? Now I want to know more, but I missed my chance, that. Because I'm like, that just hit me. I'm like, I know I got lots of counterparts out there on this planet and others. I was told I have 83 earthly incarnations. So I'm like, wow, this is cool. I'm like,
You understand that that is not a fixed number. Yes.
correct. Yes. That was just, that number is going to vary depending on what timeline I'm in. And, you know, there's all kinds of variables that I'm sure I'm not even aware of all of them. But I was like, oh my gosh, that's just amazing. And one of my counterparts left a farm tool for me from the 1900s so I could find it in the woods. And right now I'm like, it's over 100 years later, that thing just laid there and got weathered until my dog happened to take me through some honeysuckle, and I'm breaking stuff off because he's smelling something. Also, I looked down, I'm like, oh, cool. And then I asked Araya about it, and she said, yeah, I asked her how it was lost. And apparently there was a microburst and upended this guy's tools. And he was working with animals, and there was a hospital from the 1900s. Well, it was built in like 1880 or whatever, right behind my house. It used to be hospital grounds. And if you went there and you died, you never left. They had their own cemetery, they had their own crematorium, and it was self-sufficient. They had fruit trees and they raised all the animals that they needed for all the people that came there. And then later on, it got shut down. But I was like, yeah, he was working for them on their grounds. And he left it for me. And then Zariah came through after I was done asking him, and she said, hold on a minute. That was your counterpart that lost that for you. Your soul actually arranged this so he would lose that tool so you could find it and you would have that connection. And then I sold it for 75 bucks.
But the connection remains.
Yeah. But the guy I sold it to has his father-in-law is a blacksmith, and he is going to refinish and sharpen that tool and put a new handle on it and that kind of stuff, so it will live again.
Cool.
I think so. I'm
Yeah, yeah,
excited.
yeah.
This is
It feels like the you that lost the implement uh, really likes that idea of the refinishing and refurbishing of the tool.
yeah. What? Because if you're in a 19
And it experiences it as it was contemplating getting the tool. This is when that feeling was the strongest for them.
tool, because it was good. It was a valuable tool. In 1900, it was well forged. It was sharpened on 3 edges, and you could use it to chop down stuff, or you could use it to chop stuff up. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I lost this and this was part of my tools for my trade, I would be upset because you can't just go out and replace tools in 1900 that easily. Well, I say that like I know that, but I mean I'm from St. Louis, so St. Louis was a hub. It was the third largest city in the nation in 1800, and going up to 1900. So you know, it's all wonderful. And like I had reasons I get so hung up on these transcripts is because apparently I've had lots of lives as an amanuensis in Egypt, two in Alexandria, and then yeah, because I was so wrapped up in Alexandria that when they had to move the library, I reincarnated to help them move it, and Atlantis and other places as well. I find it all fascinating, but yeah. So I do the transcripts. I did them for over 2 years for the aspects of love group, and then I started with Zariah, and I've done a couple for Christian now.
Cool.
Oh, it's very cool.
Yeah. We used to have a guy that passed 4 or 5 years ago, I want to say, that filled that role in Chris's group for a long time. One of Serge's best friends actually also lived in Toronto. And he typically would be the one that would do that. And then when he decided to, and it was interesting talking to Chris when John decided to leave. And he mentioned that John felt that the transition that all of you are going through, he could better serve from this perspective now than he was, even though it was pretty cool, even then he thought he could by hanging around as the physical him, and so he made that choice. And Chris said that it was a fairly conscious choice also. It wasn't just the him as the soul made the choice. It was him going, yeah, yeah, I think I like the other feeling a little better.
And now the entity that you channeled did say that for a week or so you have been batting around ideas about a label. And he said whatever he wants to call us is fine.
Yes, yes, I'm well aware that as I've been researching this, and yeah, when I've had this symbology show up in clusters at various times in my life. And so when I was uh, first trying to, because the individuals that I'm interacting with, they've asked me, Chuck, what name? And I got no idea, nothing's ever really showed up. And then, how every now and then you'll have an experience and you're quite aware of what the meaning of the experience is when you have it. It's like, and you could have had the experience 5, 6 times, that week and nothing. And all of a sudden this time there's an awareness that shows up about something that's quite considerable. And so the bridge symbology has been showing up in clusters for me for a while now. And the the meaning behind that symbolism, as especially as we're involved in the transition that we're involved in right now. And so what occurred to me is I think I'm gonna look at other languages and see how the word for the word itself bridge is pronounced in other languages, or the idea of bridging a state might be um, pronounced in various. And I've been exploring a number of those, and I have maybe some few that are feeling the nicest so far.
Well, I'm sure you'll get the right resonance when the right
Yeah,
one comes in.
something will show up.
Or something, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I know I really don't care what they're called. They said they were beings of
Yep.
light. Well, on one day they said they were beings of light, but I haven't had that energy since that third day when I started. And I got the idea that they were kind of supervising the entities that were going to be coming through that I was speaking. And Ajax, channeled by Christian, told me that there was a tall white that desired to be channeled by me, to come through me. And I know the tall whites are just now starting to take an active role in the ascension of humanity. Before they kind of shied away because we just weren't ready, I guess. But now I'm really excited. And then when we did the heart circle, and I invited the tall white that wanted to um, be channeled by me. And then it went around, and then Raven, it came to the end. She says, we're going to get some beings from Alpha Centauri. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I got tall whites on both of my hands enclosed in this energetic circle. And it looked like I had 220 volts going through me. I'm just going like this the whole time because it was so energetic. And then after it was done, my arms felt like I had just picked up 1,500 railroad ties and carried them and installed them because I used up, so I was just full of lactic acid, or like I had, I don't know, like I took 2 bottles of cough medicine or something like that. It was like,
Hmm.
I'm like, is this what channeling DTs are like? It's all wonderful. Oh my gosh, this is part of it.
Yes, absolutely.
So many energies coming through right now. Jeepers. What a
Mhm.
treat. Thank you, Lucy.
It's nice to meet you guys.
Oh, hooey. Yes.
Were you
Yeah,
wanting to say something, hun? What's that?
I had a really interesting conversation. I am LB. My screen name is down below, but I'm actually in the same room as Christian, just hiding from the camera. Hi.
Hello.
I had a really interesting discussion with Ajax in regard to the heart circle because I feel a little bit like a fish out of water in general, because the one thing that Christian is very, very passionate about is channeling ET, whereas I am a little bit more loosey goosey and interested in contact in general. And so I was just like, what exactly showed up? And he just looked at me and grinned and he said, yep. Anything, everything that you could have imagined that you might want to, some things you didn't even know you want to. We're all there. So that was a interesting feeling for sure. So I get that feeling, right? Because that was quite profound.
and we all get exactly what we need right when we need it. You know, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, right? One of Seth's favorite things.
Yep.
One of a million favorite Seth things.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, you know what? I forgot that part. I'm so glad that you mentioned that. So remember I told you when I was standing on that road looking over and I had that experience? Okay. So it was within the month, but it's been in our terms a while, so the memory is not super distinct. But within a month after that is the first time I opened up Seth Speaks. I had never read it before. Now I'd been familiar with a few other things, but nothing that said you were the one that was creating your reality. So it was right after I had that experience that I found that book and I read it and I went, this is my experience.
Mhm.
And so of course I was sucked right in. I consumed everything that they wrote together many
And I
times.
I find people's, their lead up to where they got to Seth. I always find those interesting. I mean, it started with me with Richard Bach and Livingston Seagull. And then, I'm sitting there, I'm a teenager, and I read this book and I was so profound. I cried for I don't know how long just because of the connection and how I identified with all parts and all the characters that were in that book.
Yeah.
Even the side characters, and it was like I could visualize everything and feel everything that happened, and I hadn't been connected like that before. And then, my mom out of the blue gets me a Celestine prophecy. I saw this book. I thought you might like it. I don't know anything about it, and I don't know why I bought it, but here it is. And I read it, so I read
That's very
those.
cool.
Yeah, so I read a bunch of those, and then, you know, I looked down at a book fair and I saw this picture of this lady, and I'm like, they really don't want to sell this book, do they? And it was Jane Roberts on the back of Seth. when she was channeling, it's like, I'm like, oh my gosh, what, is she supposed to be in special ed or what? And I picked it up. I'm like, they don't even call each other by their names. And I was hooked.
Yeah, it was I finally got around to seeing the one video of someone taping Jane Roberts channeling Seth, and I had, listened to audiobooks for one or two Seth books at that point. So I had like a different image in my mind of, how that vocally sounded. And then
Right.
I saw the video, I was like, oh, that's quite different than what I expected. That's
Right. For
really
me as well. Yeah.
But
I
it
heard it
was
once.
perfect on so many levels. And I learned that I got a lot of respect for Robert Butts when I started transcribing. And then I realized how magical Seth's approach was because he spoke slow enough and with a cadence that allowed Rob to actually record everything that was said.
And it was so cool, I thought too, when they always included this when Rob would have experiences and Seth would go, what you're doing is you're showing yourself the experience. What I'm saying, you're bringing yourself some deeper awareness of through your experience. Like he wouldn't be able to talk or, whatever. There'd be all sorts of things that would happen depending on what Seth was covering. That was pretty cool.
And like today, I just learned that we have all of these energies from all of our star being brethren counterparts that may have unfinished cycles that we are completing for them on our behalf. Like the Orion stuff. They said, well, you're going through right now is the same type of division that there's leftover Orion energy for that. And they said, and Bashar happened to mention too, I think that's where I saw it in the last day or two, about the Atlantean energy that happened that, the day before was October 31st. It happened on the 1st. And then November 2nd, it was over. The comet hit, Atlantis was gone, and whatever diaspora happened, happened. And he said,
It's very intriguing, right? Very
yeah,
intriguing.
he said, because
And then when you think of it as it's all happening at the same time,
yes,
there is no flow to that
but
experience in the way we like to think of it.
they had a division like you're having a division. They had their haves and the people who thought that the other ones they weren't on the same keel. And it's like, they kind of split into different societies in the same island.
Yeah.
Like that
Yeah.
wasn't going to work through
I think,
chaos.
I think, and I know that there's been a few individuals, Bashar being one of them, that have mentioned that, as we widen our awareness a little bit more, we're going to know a lot more about all the various cultures and how they've expressed themselves here than what we do now. And it's interesting too, because Chris, the one entity that's channeled by Serge, what's the name? He has a particular name that he calls us. And he says, creators of civilizations is what he said. And there's a name that he put to it. And I don't know, like I said, the names aren't important. But so the concept being that we, at that layer of ourselves, what we revel in is creating civilizations. And we create many, many, many civilizations in that way. And gain all the things we get out of doing that.
Now,
And
do you
so,
follow Ryoka at all?
yeah, a little bit,
Yeah.
not a lot, a little bit. Again, it's just mostly because again, I'm part of the groups on Facebook.
Right. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
because he has on November 2nd, he has the Egyptian Blue Temple where he is going to teach how to raise your Ankh.
Uh,
That, I know that's got to resonate with you because of your direct connection with Amon Ra, the other entity, maybe one and the same, who knows? But I was like, oh my gosh. And I found everything that I've seen of him just fascinating. And that was one of the CE5s that we did, and we got together and one to the lunar locust when he was giving all kinds of details about the second moon, Arjuna, that came on, which is the perfect timing for me where my timeline shifted and everything started falling into place and I had all these miracles and all of this fantastic energy and connections happen.
ask them if they will answer your question. if the two of you are close in any incarnations as at least very good friends.
Yeah, and the entities that I'm bringing through, they asked me what I'd like to know, and then, and then they came back and I got my response, and they said, well, besides everything, you know, I was reaching for the stars, you might say, and they're like, well, they know you can't handle all that here. That's why you're here, because you can't handle all that, because you have to learn your way up, you know?
Well, you don't want to.
No,
You don't want to have the awareness that you have in that other place. You want
right.
it to be very sequestered.
Yeah.
That's what this experience is all about.
But I'm just not in the habit of asking the questions, I guess, because, and maybe I'm just maybe I just haven't practiced it enough to just do that. But it's not like they're not reading all of my thoughts. So every time I have something, pop into my head, then they respond to it. It's just cool. And the bug visitors are very cool. Every time I've gone, I've had just one single bug, and it's always been a different one that lands on me or lands on my paper. I shared the one of the little whatever that is. It's the size of a head of a pin. It looks like a little dragon. And I mean, I know it's natural, but just because it's natural does not mean that it's not have special significance and it doesn't have a different set of eyes, non-eyes.
Well, there's many ways for you to tap
Spirit.
yourself on the shoulder.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I realized
Hello, Ray.
that, when we're going through and experiencing our um, our end of life review or whatever, we're going to see it from every single consciousness that we've interacted with to get the fullness of all of those events and experiences. So, you abuse a stapler, that stapler is going to say, well, this is how I saw it. This is my interaction, and every critter and everything else, you know.
I've really been trying to experience some of that end of life review as much as I can in the now, right? So I just, because I feel like that really helps me connect to other things. Like what does it feel like from those other perspectives, that particular moment that encompassed all those things in that situation?
Oh yeah, yeah. That feels like a very cool way to open up those channels. I mean, to access those channels. I guess I'll
Well,
say maybe.
and not only that, but it also provides the opportunity to look at it from a more open viewpoint, so you can see what judgments that you had, and that those people were just there because you draw them in because you needed that experience. So I spent like 2 hours where I just had events just flooding through me, like I mentioned in one of the meetings. It was from the second grade when somebody stole my ruler, through all kinds of stuff, and it allowed me to thank them and extend them love for being in that experience. And I found that just amped up my vibration, because I lost all of this hidden baggage that I didn't even know existed, because I had a minor grudge, or I had a bad word and bad taste in my mouth about these people or the experience. And now I don't. Now I'm like, hey, thanks for getting me to where I'm at. And oh my gosh, goosebumps again. This is awesome. I love this. Yeehaw. And
Yeah, I know. I can think of back in my life, and because I've done this before, once I had some awareness, and recognize those times where I made a conscious choice in that moment to view somebody in a much better light, even though it would have been very easy for me to go the other direction, and sometimes even act in that way. And I made a choice, at that. No, it's like, and I didn't know anywhere near what I know now, but I said, well, life was different back then. I would basically say this: you don't know why they were influenced the way that they were influenced. You just don't know all the things. And I have a choice about what I want to do, from this point forward. Do I want to reflect that, or do I want to do something different? And yeah, it's there are times like that that stand out for you that go, and you can see how your life pivoted around that point, you know? So they're so, I think like things like that are so cool. And of course, they're expressed in so many different ways.
It's I think a common theme is like you, I was brought up into Christianity. So I bought into all of this stuff. And then at one point it was like, hold on, this doesn't make any sense. That it's all bullshit that we have to give our best stuff and our firstborns to the priests. Them fucking greedy bastards, you know. And it's like, oh, and then I read the Bible again. I'd already read it once, and I read it the second time, and I'm like, oh, oh my gosh, you know. So we had to unlearn all of that. We set ourselves up for that challenge so we would have that information in our back pocket that we could pull it out and relate to people, even though they weren't where we at. And I guess that, you know, that's my take on it, because I know I'm supposed to be a mentor. I'm supposed to help people who are going to be disillusioned, are questioning, and they come to me for answers. And that's happened a lot through my responses on the various first contact groups and the Bashar groups. You know, I've had people who just reached out and say, hey, I'm having this problem. I'm like, look, you know, you're going to have to call me, because I'm not texting all this stuff. And, you know, and if it comes through, then great. I get a chance to mentor and I get a chance to practice. And it
That
just
is cool.
hypes me up. I love this stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
like I'm supposed to. What was the key for you that changed on your Christianity?
I, again, I think it was the that physical response I had to the smell of the incense in the church. It was like it actually it drove me out. My system was not responding at all well good to it. And then I tried it a second time, and it was like, nope, I can't take this stuff. And it, you know, it wasn't like I was super attached at all, you know, but it was just default. It's what I did. You know, some of the Catholic schools that I went to, we went to church every single morning, you know, before school.
And it's
And
interesting.
as well as showing up on Saturday and Sunday, you know, so I, at times there was a lot of it going on.
A censor drove you out.
but, but the thing is that, I never really felt super connected to it. It was more like just what I was up to. You know, it was, you know, my grandmother was very expectant in that way. My mom, not so much, but she
Yeah.
didn't really say much about that, right? But when my grandmother passed, especially, but when we moved out of one area of town into another area of town, um, never at home was any of that stuff mentioned. I
Mm.
mean, she sent me to a Catholic school because there was a choice in seventh or eighth grade, but that was to get me away from my friends because
Mm.
she thought they were a bad influence on me. So she wanted me to go to school someplace else, right? So I went, what was it, perhaps 2.5 miles away or something like that to a Catholic school instead of the public school that was close. Um, and uh, and so I did that. Um, and then ninth grade also, but it was like just habit, you know, it was just the environment that I was kind of used to, you know, and it wasn't like I was so, ooh, you know, I'm Catholic or anything like that, you know. And so, you know, I find that, and I don't know all of what is a part of this, but I didn't get it because I wasn't attached to it. And I didn't have a lot of bad experiences with it. I also didn't, for the most part, at all, actually, react strongly towards the church in a negative way when I started to understand a much wider version of all of what this is all about. It was like, yeah, okay, they're confused. You know, it wasn't really a strong thing for me.
Yeah. Our house was always big on guilt and punishment. That's why,
Uh,
that's why you did things. And
yeah.
my mom was all fearful that she was going to hell. And later on reflection, I'm like, well, you had a child out of wedlock and you blame my dad for it and all of this other stuff. And I'm like, you already believe that you're going to hell. You're just trying to temper it right now. Unless you change that belief, you know, that's what you're going to get. And
Yeah.
that fear, you know, we would say, where are we going? And she's like, to hell if you don't live right. And I'm like, well, you know, that was a pat response. So,
Right. Yes.
you know, we got, yeah, it was all anything that you did, like I always mentioned that her favorite commandment was honor thy father and thy mother. You know, you could kill somebody, but if I tell you not to, you better not, or we're going to punish you. That was
Yeah.
it. It had to be punished. There was
Yeah.
penance to be paid.
Right. You know, I think it's for me, certainly it is from this perspective to think back at how constrained and constricted life was for individuals, you know, in the early 1900s, 1800s, 1700s. I mean, the rules that, you know, they needed to conduct themselves by in certain situations to us now, to me now, oh my God. It would be, you got to be joking me. I'm not doing that.
And in your experience, are you finding a lot of Sethies are trapped in a Seth box?
You
That
know,
they just
I
don't.
used to call it, what did I used to call it? Sports team mentality,
Mm,
where, you know, you pick up the pom poms for a certain source and, you know, and all the rest of the other teams you boo at, kind of, you know. Not really, but you
make
don't
your
give
bed.
much credence to, you know. Um, you know, we've all read all of Seth, you know, and listened to, you know, whatever. And incredible information, of course, you know, but, you know, it's been added to in all sorts of ways over the years,
Uh,
which deepens the understanding, I believe, you know. I don't think, you know, so I consumed all his Seth stuff. Then I went to Elias and I consumed all of Elias's stuff. I still get transcripts from those guys. I think maybe largely because I suggested to them that they should put a donate button on their site, and they did, and I think it served them well. um, and then Chris's stuff after that. You know, there's you know I've read, of course, and been associated with lots of, not so much Abraham, very 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 little Abraham for whatever reason. Um, and you know tons of you know books you know that you guys have probably read all of them, you know strange things like the Urantia, and here I'll tell you this. I was a Hare Krishna for 6 years.
oh,
I was a Gaudiya Vaishnav for 6 years, and I was strict about it. No TV, no radio, almost no food that we didn't make in the house. uh Only watching those types of spiritual shows, only listening to that kind of music. I would listen of my own accord to nothing else. That's all I read. I would get up at 3:30 in the morning to meditate for an hour and a half to 2 hours, and I fasted every Sunday. I got home. I meditated another hour and a half. I had an altar, and we had an altar in the house. We would offer our food every single day. It's called your sadhana. What's your practice like? And when I would share that with even other Indians many times, when we would have these sadhu sangha kind of things, they mean gatherings where wisdom is shared. Um, and they would say, "Hey, what's your sadhana?" And I would tell them, they would go, "Oh my God." Because it was so strict, you know. I like to dive into the deep into things when I do stuff, you know.
immersion.
Um, and and so I learned a lot about it, you know. Well, what was interesting is that guy who channels Serge had done that once before and wanted to revisit it. And so because he was a friend of ours then by that time, we all thought, oh, we'll give it a shot too, you know. And so you know we dove into it, and I learned a lot about, because I almost closed the door on channeled sources and decided to go down that path. I was pretty close. But I didn't. And I think I brought myself there to understand how totally immersed somebody can be in a particular philosophy, because I was there.
And of course, another probable continued.
Yeah, right. And I did some interesting things. I I decided within that, in kind of that Eastern philosophy kind of way, to discontinue having sex. I had no desire after a while, none, not the least. And once I was out of that stuff and I understood it for what it was, now it's all back. Like it was never gone. But I swear to God, nothing, no desire. No woman was attracted to me in that way. There was no desire because that's what I wanted to do so badly. And I gave myself that experience. You know, you learn. So of course, you know, it's through our experiences that we learn all these things through so much, right? And so I learned so much in that 6 years about the approaches that I can have to all sorts of things and the approaches that individuals have to whatever way that they choose to follow, how the things they want to define their life through, whatever it might happen to be. And it can be hard for us, I think, even those of us who are doing this stuff all the time, to really know just how dynamic that actually is. That we may even think that we've spent a certain amount of time with a particular philosophy or thought process and not even realize that maybe that memory was created just in that instant. And there really was none of that history that we think there was in the way that we think it occurred.
Yeah.
So
And
it's such a dynamic experience. That's one of the cool things that is so much part of my awareness now of just how variable it is all the time. And we still have not that there's anything wrong with it, but the penchant, it's so strong to still view it as this linear flow that happens, you know?
cool.
I remember hearing a description of that really set well with me. And I think it was like a piece of paper that had like a bunch of imagery and designs of patterns crisscrossing out from a center point. And the description of the piece of paper was, you know, think of like all these patterns as different probable selves, different future and past timelines. And what you're doing as a multidimensional being is you're putting this other piece of paper on top of it that's like a filter. And you have these little notches cut out so that you can see one future path and one past path. And what you do as you take, you know, shift your perspectives and take different actions and whatnot, you're shifting that filter on top of everything so that different things come into focus. And I was just like, wow, that's a really
It's kind of a cool analogy.
cool way of describing that.
Yeah. And one of the aspects of love sessions, somebody said, well, how come I can't know everything that I need to and from a larger perspective? And they said, okay, look at it this way. Picture yourself, you're in a big classroom, and at the front of the classroom is nothing but a huge whiteboard. And on this whiteboard, there is just a huge mathematical computation. And you get on it, and it just goes on and on and on, and you get down to the bottom, and there's X. And you are one symbol on that blackboard or the whiteboard. Now, how are you going to understand where you get to X if you're just one symbol and you don't even know what the other symbols are or what they mean? And I was like, damn, that is complex and that is comprehensive. Like that really hit home for me. I'm like, I'm right where I'm at. I'm hopefully I'm one of the equal signs, but that's just my Leo ego talking.
Can't help but be one of those equal signs.
Very true, very true.
Hey guys, it has been awesome. Thank you so much. I need
Yeah.
to
Sounds
go
good.
help wife with kiddos. They're getting a little rowdy in the background.
Yeah, I think I'm
Thank you
gonna.
both for staying up with me. And I gotta take my dog out, do his business because it's
I
a couple
bet.
hours past my bedtime. But it's been very energetic and a lovely, enjoyable time. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
it's been a lot of fun, guys. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Come
Appreciate
back
it.
again, please.
All right, Al.